Hello everybody. In the previous video we said that after d4 we will play knight f6, although d5 is also playable, but in my opinion knight f6 is a little bit more flexible and avoids some I would say boring lines. We play like this, and in the previous video we saw the main line after this, which is c4. In this video we will cover other options playable by white here. What other instead of c4 so white can play now. Okay, some players which don't know the theory will probably play c3. But we are just happy to see this on the board. We can immediately play d5, and we are just happy with the position on the move number 2. We are stepping back. If bishop g5 is played, we will actually allow that bishop to take on f6 and even to double our pawns. I will again recommend that we simply go with d5. So now e6 is not needed. We can immediately go with the d5 move. And if white takes the bishop, we will retake with the e-pawn. And we actually have a strong shield in front of our king when we play short castle soon, so this will be just a great position for us. Let us see other options for white, because not all white players will take on f6. If bishop h4 is played, we will proceed with our plan with c5. So we again stick with the idea of playing d5 and c5 and later developing another knight when possible. So let me step back. So after some other options, we will also play c5. So these are, for example, f3. We will again play c5. Okay. If now c4 is played, but actually this is not the same position as when white plays c4 on the second move. Now we have another variation. We now can play immediately knight e4, attacking the bishop on g5, and this is already a certain advantage for black here. So now knight e4. Stepping back, if knight d2 seems pretty passive, but some players will play this. This allows us to play c5 again, so we will play c5. If knight c3, this is now an interesting variation, putting some further pressure on our d5 d5 pawn, but this is not in the spirit of this opening, putting the knight in front of the c pawn, and actually we have here time to play h6 immediately, challenging the bishop here. And we already said that if bishop takes, we retake with the e pawn. Okay. If knight f3, we actually again have time to play knight e4, challenging this way the bishop on g5. moving back. If e3 a somewhat more passive move, we again go with our main idea c5. And finally, that's all. We already said that if bishop takes, we retake. If bishop takes on f6, we retake with the e pawn. Okay, moving back to the move number 2. So we now covered bishop g5 move. If knight c3, actually I already said that this is not in the spirit of this opening, and actually I like to see moves like that. I can immediately go with d5, not spending the move on e6 or c6, so d5 immediately. Also, if white will play e3, this is not considered some good opening, and I can again play d5. Okay, if bishop f4, this is already an interesting variation. This will most commonly lead to the London system. In London system, actually, more frequently is played that white plays with the knight first and then bishop f4, but here we will also most frequently go to the London system. But at this point, I again recommend that we simply go d5 first. And now actually, if white plays knight f3, this now transposes to the London system, where I recommend that we play c5. And actually, in other variations that white can play, I will again recommend c5. So what white can play? Some players will maybe play h3. I again recommend c5. Also, if knight c3, I recommend again a c5 move. And if e3, for example, I again recommend c5 move. We will see soon more in variation which will go with knight f3 first, because I already said that there are many transpositions in these 4 openings, so I will not cover everything in full depth, because we will see we will transpose to this exact position later in other variations. Okay. I now step back again to move a number 2. And actually we will play the last possibility, which is already announced, knight f3 move. So if knight f3, this is after c4 by far the most common move. So the 2 most common moves are c4, which we covered in the previous video, and now knight f3 move. After knight f3 move, I recommend that we play d5. We can, and we will play d5. If now white plays c4, we will actually transpose to the variations from the previous video with e4. We will play e4, and we will transpose to the main lines which we covered in our previous video. So I will not go further with this. So I will actually step back and to see what happens in other variations which white can play now. And let me see what are those variations for white now. So if c3, which I already explained is not the best move here, but also not a huge mistakes, and players who don't play according to the theory will play sometimes this. We can again proceed with our plan. c5 is playable and we play c5. Going back, if now knight c3, again c5 is playable. Stepping back. If bishop g5, we again have a move which we have seen in some previous variations. This is knight e4, challenging that bishop this way immediately. Stepping back. White can also play g3. After g3, I recommend that we play bishop to f5. Putting some pressure on c2. We will also have retreat square on g6 later. So after g3, bishop f5 by black is a great move actually. And now if white plays c4, we will simply protect our pawn with e6. And also if white goes to the fianchetto with bishop g2, we will again play e6. So e6 is actually our idea, but we had time to go out with the bishop first, with bishop f5 in this variation. Okay, we are stepping back to move number 3. If e3 is played instead, we again have time, and c5 is again playable. We again play c5 again. Okay, and finally we step back and we see the main line of the London system, which is bishop f4. So if white plays bishop f4, this is now the main line of the popular London system, and we will play a c5 in this variation. Okay, now white has several options, and we will cover all of them. Actually, we will cover 3 main variations here, which are first exchange variation. If if d takes c5 immediately. So what happens if white takes the pawn? It seems that we are pawn down, but actually we are not. We have enough compensation, and we will eventually win the pawn back. So how to play after d takes c5? We play e6 first. We are immediately challenging a c5 pawn to take it back. And now let us see options for white here. If bishop e3, not a natural move to put the bishop in front of the e2 pawn, but some players will play, and actually this way they protect the c5 pawn, but we simply go with the plan. We are a pawn down, but we are just in lead. We have a lead in development. We go simply with our developing moves. Knight c6 is playable, and although we are a pawn down, we have actually already an advantage here. So I step back. If queen d4, if white decides to protect the pawn this way, but this is even worse because with knight c6 developing move, we are immediately chasing the queen back, and what options does white has here? We will see that actually doesn't have good options at all. If queen e1, going back with the queen, we can immediately retake the pawn, bishop takes c5. Going back, if queen e3, still trying to protect the c5 pawn, but now very strong move is knight e4. This is a great outpost for the knight, and also attacking the c5 pawn for the second time, and this pawn will really fall soon, but we have also a great development here. Okay, if queen a4 as queen a4, yes, we can immediately take the pawn on c5, but this is actually not the best option. I recommend that we go with bishop d7. Bishop d7 is a developing move, and actually bishop is on the same diagonal as the white queen, so we have some discovered possibilities. So we are just fine after this move. And actually we are stepping back. If queen c3, if queen c3, trying to protect c5 pawn this way, but this is actually a blunder because we have again knight e4 move, which immediately chases the queen, attacks c5 pawn for the second time, and this is already a huge winning advantage for black here. On the move number 6 we are winning. Of course we need to play precisely, but this is already winning for black. Okay, let me step back. What other options does white has? If knight to e5 is played, it's now a better move, but we can simply retake the pawn, take on c5, and actually we have some advantage in the development. Okay, if c4 is played, we will again first retake the pawn. Bishop takes c5. Okay, stepping back. Some players will take on b8. This is not the best option for white. We will retake with the rook, and now we can push our b pawn, and actually this is advantage for black here again. Okay, stepping back. If knight b to d2, developing move this way, we will again first take the pawn back. Bishop takes c5. Also, after c3, we will take the pawn back, and also after knight c3, we will take the pawn back. And actually not just that we are equal in material, but we have a certain small positional advantage here. Also, if a white plays e3, we will again retake bishop takes c5. And actually, the last option, which tries to save the pawn, is not the best move, and we will see now why. If white plays b4, trying to protect the c5 pawn and be a pawn up, but actually we have a very strong move. We have a5, and it's already a small advantage on our side, and actually if white doesn't play accurately, the position can fall apart immediately. So we will see what now black can play. If black plays queen d2, trying to protect b4 pawn this way, this is again a blunder. We have knight e4. This knight is a monster here, attacks the queen, controls also the c3 square, and actually in the next move we will take on b4. Later we will take on c5, and we are winning already here. So trying to save the pawn is actually frequently simply a disaster for white here. So let me step back and let us see other option. If bishop to d2, if bishop retreats to d2, trying to save the pawn that way, but now first we take on b4, and when bishop takes, we have a winning move, knight c6. Knight c6. Actually, why is this winning for black? We actually we will soon retake the c5 pawn, and also we have rook on open file, and white is not developed at all. For example, let me see that, for example, a3 is a disaster for white, because we can now take here, and white cannot retake because white is losing the rook. So this is really already crushing for black. Okay, we step back and we see another options for white. If b takes e5, we are okay with that. We are simply recapturing on c5, and actually our pawn structure is much better. We have also rook on the file, on a file where white has doubled pawns, and actually we are simply great in this position. Okay, let me step back and let me step back and let me see what happens if instead now white protects with a3, but now we simply take on b4. Again, white cannot retake because it loses the rook on a1. The best try is first to take on b8, and when we capture back, then to take on b4. But actually, now we can play b6, and both pawns c5 and b4 will fall soon with simply our pressure is on the queen side here. We are pressuring on the queen side here, and this is a lead. This is a huge lead in development for black here. Okay, we step back, and to see other options. The similar thing happens if c3. We again can just take on b4, and after if c pawn takes, we have knight c6, which is again a winning move here. And finally, we step back. White can try immediately take our bishop on b8, and of course we retake with the rook. We don't have other options. And now white can either take on e5, but now we can take with the queen, and it's a check, and actually we are having a huge pressure here, and this is really winning for black. And finally, other options are again a3 or c3, but the similar situations occurs. If a3, we take on b4, and when white takes, b6 is the key move here. And a similar situation occurs if white plays c3 first. We again take, and the only option for white is to retake. And again, b6 is the key move for black's advantage here. Okay, So so c5 was a good move for black, and taking on c5 for white was not so good, especially if white tries to save the pawn at all costs. This will most frequently lead to black's advantage. Okay, we are now stepping back. And we are now stepping back to move number 4, and instead of taking on a c5, black can try to play c3. Okay, after c3, we will play knight c6. And if now e3, we will play queen to b6, and we will transpose to variations we will see soon, which we will see soon when white first plays e3 and then c3. We will cover this soon. And now I step back. If instead white tries to play here on the move number 5, d takes c5, we will again play e6 and fight for the c5 pawn. Also, if some passive moves like h3, we will again play queen to b6. So playing queen to b6, putting further pressure also to b5 pawn, and also diagonally to d4 pawn is a frequent idea here in the London system. And finally, we step back, and if white plays developing move knight b to d2, we will simply take on the d4. So c takes d4 is our move in this variation. And finally, I step back to move number 4, and instead of playing c3, white plays e3 first. We will go with knight c6. This is actually a natural move order for black in the London system. So we played d5, then knight f6, then c5, then knight f6, and most probably later queen to b6. Okay, let me see how black can play now. So let me go first with some sidelines, some more passive moves. If now a3, we immediately place queen to b6, which is a natural place for our queen here in this variation. If bishop to d3 is played, if bishop to d3 is played, I recommend that we play bishop g4, pinning the knight. Moving back, if d takes c5, we are playing e6 immediately and fight for the c5 pawn is in front of us, as already seen earlier. If, okay, stepping back, if bishop to e2, more passive move, we will now take on d4. Okay, moving back. If c4, challenging our d5 pawn, but it is protected. We will again pin the knight with bishop g4 here. Okay, stepping back. If bishop b5, trying to pin our knight, but this achieves nothing because we can play queen a5. Of course, white has knight c3. We are not winning, but it's okay position for black here. After queen a5 check. And finally, if now c3, I have already mentioned that we will transpose to already seen position with queen b6. Queen b6. So we transposed already seen position, but actually I will not go further with this variation. We will see some other more natural lines in this London system. So I step back to see other possibilities for white. If a knight sorry, actually we are stepping back to the last variation, which is actually the main line. If instead of playing c3, white plays knight b to d2 first. We will again go with queen to b6. And now there are several options for white. If queen c1, protecting actually b2 pawn, which is under attack, we will now take in the center c takes d4 again. And actually we have an advantage here. If white protects this b2 pawn with knight b3 move, that was one of the purpose of knight going to d2 first, to go now to b3 now. But actually this is a mistake. This is a mistake because we have c4 move chasing that knight, and actually it's a huge advantage. We have a winning tactics here now to win here. So this is not a good option for white trying to protect b2 pawn this way. So I step back. Better options are of course c3. But c3 allows to capture on b2, and we already have a pawn up and a certain advantage here. Instead of c3, white can play b3. But actually b3 is also a mistake, even a bigger mistake. After b3 we can take in the center c takes d4. And actually e takes d4 is the best move, but now we have a strong e5 move. it's a total mess, but actually queen takes d4 is our key move here. If knight takes, then queen takes. If pawn takes, then we have either bishop c5 or knight g4 attacking f2 square. And if bishop takes on e5, we have a knight takes e5 first. And then again further pressures. If knight takes, we have a bishop b4 attacking the queen. Sorry, not this one. This was a mistake. Bishop b4 should be played. Not attacking the queen, but putting further pressure here. And if pawn takes, then again we have winning jumps with the knight, either knight e4 or knight g4, putting the pressure on f2. So this is really tactical position, and black is winning here. So b3 was also not the good move because of this pawn takes d4. Okay, let us see other options for white here. White can play simply rook b1, protecting the pawn that way, but this is also not the best. Again, the reason is that we can immediately go for an attack with c takes d4 here in the center. And actually the best for white was simply to take on c5. So d takes c5 is the main line, allowing us to take on b2. So queen takes b2 is played, and actually white should allow this by playing d takes c5 first. And now let us see also responses for white now. If simply developing move bishop e2, we will also play developing move e6, stepping back. If c4, trying to challenge our d5 pawn, we have time to play further pressure to a c2 square with bishop f5. Okay, stepping back. If knight b3, actually our queen has a retreat square on a3, so our queen is safe. And after knight b3, we can actually play e5, chasing the bishop. And actually this is positionally in black's advantage. And we step back. If bishop to d3, if bishop to d3, actually now it's not clear what it is happening here, but we already have we are already strong on the queen side, and actually I will prefer go with g6. You already know that I'm not fond of fianchettoing the bishop, and so I'm not fond of g6, b6, b3 and g3 moves to play, but in this variation will be an exception. In this variation I recommend g6. And finally, the most natural for black is immediately to challenge our queen with rook b1 move. Now it is important to remember that it is not the best to capture on a2. The best move which I recommend is to play queen c3. You can also play queen to a3, but c3 is also allowed, and it's even better, I think. So queen c3. So a total disaster for black will be to take on a2. Because now white has first bishop b5, move, and then there are no squares for the queen. Actually, still black has placed something, but it is already an advantage for white here. Let me see even with the best play what will happen now if we try to chase a6 or bishop d7. Okay, a6. We can immediately attack the queen. And of course, if we try to save the queen, if queen b2, actually the only square, then c4 is another move for white. And what can black now place? Black cannot take here because white will take the rook. If black tries to fight either with the developing the bishop or maybe taking the c4 pawn, actually bishop will take on c6, and after b takes, white can either go with a short castle or putting further pressure on the queen. So queen will survive, but at cost which is the elite in the development for white. So white will have a winning advantage here. Okay, thank you for watching this. See you soon in our last video, which will cover other openings for white instead of e4 and d4.